Welcome to the Intercut Podcast, the weekly show going over the TV, movies, and entertainment that people can't cut away from. I am your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he's got 8 dads and he doesn't need a father. It's Arturo Zurita.
Whoever hasn't seen BoJack Horseman, they're going to think that's like super weird. But yes, glad to be back over here talking about a show that you and I both love.
Yes.
Those of you who aren't watching BoJack Horseman know that this is going to be a BoJack Horseman heavy episode. Also,
Yeah.
And then we're going to get very depressing towards the end of it. So overall, this is the sad episode.
Yeah, it's going to be all depravity and depression from here on out on this episode of the
Put all the
Intercut.
pills, rope, anything bad. Just
Trigger
put that
warning,
away while you watch this episode.
please.
Yes.
Right. So we are going to get into our usual stuff in a little bit. We'll talk about the rights to the James Bond franchise and even more upheaval in the Star Wars director universe. But first, what you watching, Art? Well, aside from BoJack Horseman.
Besides BoJack Horseman, which is what everyone should be watching, I've been watching It. Very rarely do I get that craving to go back into the theater, pay that full price because I still haven't got that movie pass that's come in. But I really want to watch It again. I know you didn't watch it.
Not yet.
Did you watch the original?
Actually, I haven't.
Miniseries?
No. I know.
Okay.
I'm in the minority there. A lot of people.
Yeah, no,
really
it's
love
okay.
that.
Screw that. Yeah, that ruined my childhood. But It, I didn't think it was gonna be much of it, especially because like I'm a big Fukunaga fan.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it because like that man is a genius. Like he shoots his own stuff. He's just good, and I know that a part of his draft still stuck with it, but it was a director who did Mama.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't know if you saw Mama. I wasn't
Haven't
really
seen Mama yet.
high on it, so I was a little bit surprised when people seemed to be coming out of it really satisfied.
I thought it was good. I thought it was good. I think what really makes it is the kids. The kid from Stranger Things was hilarious, super inappropriate. Loved every bit of it. There was another kid in particular, and I wish I could remember his name, but he has a gazebo line. If you've seen the movie, you know that's the best line in the movie. But this kid, he's like the one who's like afraid of everything because his mom is like
Hovering.
he's all on him. That kid was fantastic. Acting wise, that kid was phenomenal. And just all of them in general were really good. I don't know if did you read the book?
No. I'm not a horror person generally, so it has to be really pushed on me for it to be
Okay,
that
yeah. So let's talk about the horror side of it. I don't think it's scary at all.
That's
right?
what I've been
And I
hearing
saw a
too.
Packed theater, and I think that's the beauty of it because even Stephen King himself said when he wrote the book, it's not supposed to be scary. He just said he's like, all right, I keep writing all of these stories that have to do with kids growing up and whatever, and people keep saying that I'm a horror writer. Well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna create a character that shapeshifts into all of these scary things. So he did, and he decided the clowns were the scariest things in the world, and all clowns started going out of business and stuff. But what makes the movie, again, is that love that you have for the characters. Like, you enjoy them, you want them to be okay, and especially after the first, and I don't think it's a spoiler because you see it in the trailer, but they don't show you what they do to Georgie. This is a rated R movie. They do not care that it's children. And after that first stunt, you legit fear for these kids. And they do some jacked up stuff to the kids. So if that's not your thing, don't watch it. But in terms of being scared, I wasn't. I just found it enjoyable how they kept creating these like crazy visuals. People were scared in the theater. Like if you were scared of clowns, whoo!
Yeah, I don't think that this would be great for anybody who actually has that fear going in.
If you have that fear of clowns, it's like someone tossing you out of a cruise and you can't swim. There's no hope for you at all. The one thing, though, I will say is that if I was a little kid and I saw this movie, I'm not sleeping for a week.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's got an R rating for a reason, I guess. And talking about that R rating, it broke a bunch of records with its release this weekend, 117 million, and no other movie came close to it. It was otherwise a very slow weekend at the box office, but people seem to be really hungry for something like this, something like it. I think I read somewhere that people were projecting it would only have made like 60 million a couple weeks ago, so that just gives you an idea of how much it exceeded expectations by. So people really were ready for this, and I honestly think a lot of that is just like all this news about clowns in the woods and some of the viral marketing they're doing. I mean,
do you think it had to do with that?
I honestly look.
That was a year ago.
It was a year ago, but the news stories pop up now and then again. You know, Facebook keeps it alive and stuff. And
that's true.
I'm thinking of it from the perspective of like a 15 or 16-year-old kid who's like joking around with his friends and doesn't really have much else to do. But like, this provides some kind of weird excitement that they can attach stories to. And you know, I don't think it's been a while since we've gotten a creepy person movie. You know, we've had.
Yeah, that's true.
These different types of horror things that were more like environmental or demonic and
stuff, but never that thing where you can come across. You're right. Like, we haven't had a Scream movie in a while.
Yeah.
we haven't had a Freddie or a Jason movie in a while.
At least not a successful one. But yeah, pretty much not in a little while. So yeah, I think there's just a hunger for a movie like it, and it was clear from the box office results. So I'm
word of mouth and everything.
I'm eager to go see it.
Yeah, I mean, check it out.
We've talked in the past about how we both really enjoy movies with kids that are taken seriously, that are treated like adults. So I'm excited to see what this ends up being.
It's got cool elements to it, especially when you consider that it's not just a horror movie. There's a comedic aspect to it. There's a friendship aspect to it. There's a whole aspect of like it's supposed like there's elements to it. I don't think it is a great movie, but it has so many good elements. You know, so you can go to one restaurant and eat something that's really, really good, or go to a buffet that has a lot of things that are good.
Right.
You can go for one thing that's great, or a lot of things that are good. And it's got a lot of elements to it, a lot of psychological things to deal with. So
overall,
check it out
experience.
If you haven't.
Solid.
I loved it.
Solid. So I have been catching up on more Netflix stuff, as is my usual purview. I finished Atypical, which I brought up on our last podcast, and kept enjoying it. It does have some predictable, sort of cliched kind of like romantic things going on, but it remains really charming. And I think, you know, Keir Gilchrist is so good in the role that it's worth sticking through. I also really like Michael Rappaport as this like dad who's clearly kind of like out of his league in dealing with his son's autism. I think it registered as very honest. So I still would recommend Atypical, despite the fact that the second half isn't necessarily as good as the first half. But what I'm actually watching a lot of right now, I just finished the new Jason Bateman starring Netflix show, Ozark. So this is a show that takes place, it starts in Chicago and then transfers to the Ozark area of Missouri. I hadn't really heard about it. And it's a story that essentially asks Jason Bateman to play the role of money launderer for a cartel. It takes an average everyday accountant, I guess. I wasn't really that familiar. And then makes him part of this larger drug operation. So when you have a premise like this, obviously the main comparison to come up is Breaking Bad, where you take a regular guy who has more everyday attributes that are useful, and then he uses them to be unconventional in his approach to crime. Which is why I sort of think of this as like B- Breaking Bad, like
the Great Value version of it.
But I don't even want to say it's a version of Breaking Bad, because there's so much more that Breaking Bad does. You know, you were just talking about how something does a lot of things good. I mean, Breaking Bad did a lot of things great, and Ozark is maybe doing like a couple of them pretty good. I think Breaking Bad gave you a lot more intrigue, a lot more thoughtfulness. There was a way that the characters all sort of, their actions felt really earned. When something would come out of nowhere, it felt like it had to be that way, even if it was a surprise.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
And Ozark never really does that. There's a lot of things that seem to happen to give you those, oh shit, what the fuck, Breaking Bad kind of moments.
Didn't earn them though.
And I think some of them were earned. Like there's definitely, it's exciting and you want to stick with it, but there was definitely less of a sense of reason behind a lot of it. It felt a lot more like they were trying to give you shock than actually shock you. So I'm not going to say that it's not worth watching. It's especially because I think there's been a lack of suspenseful drama shows in the years since Breaking Bad or Boardwalk Empire, and shows like that went off the air. If you want that kind of vibe of like, I want to know what's going to happen next. Are they going to die in this episode? It's a solid way to spend 10 episodes, hour long, not that bad. But yeah, there are comparisons to Breaking Bad out there. Don't get your hopes that high. It's solid, but nothing more than maybe B-.
Do you think that binging it hurts it? Because you're talking about that suspension, right? And Breaking Bad built off of that.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad practically, I don't want to say, but created the half season.
In a way.
And left you waiting even more. In a way, it pioneered.
Oh yeah,
it,
the ending half season thing. Yeah, totally.
Yes. So, do you think? Because I do feel that's an issue with a lot of Netflix shows. I wonder if we had time to process a weak thing and theorize, especially with a show like this, and just let it sit with a little. Do you think that would have affected it? Positively?
So I will say that like I didn't necessarily binge a lot of it in a row. I was giving it like a day or two, which is still
you wait a week every Tuesday night.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's not a week. There's obviously a difference when you wait a week. Maybe it would have been a little more interesting. I think there's not necessarily enough to keep me there week to week. I think it's honestly more likely that I would have given up on the show had it not been all available to me. I mean, I'm not trying to say that like this is like a must binge kind of show. It's solid, but I don't think you feel like you're falling into a rabbit hole the way you do when you first start watching Breaking Bad, or the way the first season of Mr. Robot felt, where it's like, oh my God. You know, this is insane, and I need to know what happens next. Doesn't.
I'm gonna hit you with another one. Are you recommending Bloodline, or are you recommending this show?
I haven't seen Bloodline. I have to consult to my off-camera.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
Off-camera
my
girlfriend.
bad. I thought you had seen it.
Bloodline, Ozark, probably Bloodline, right? The girlfriend decided.
Because I've seen Bloodline. All right then. All right, cool.
All right, so we are moving on to Yay or Nay News, the segment where we look at the latest happenings in the entertainment industry. And there is a big news story. Art, stop me when this sounds familiar. A director has parted ways with Lucasfilm over the new Star Wars movie. After Gareth Edwards was informally replaced by Tony Gilroy on Rogue One, and more recently, Lord and Miller were replaced by Ron Howard on the upcoming Han Solo origin story, Colin Trevorrow is now the latest director to bite the dust, no longer helming Episode 9 of the Star Wars film franchise.
Yeah, I did hear about this. Okay.
Initial rumors are that Episode 8 director Rian Johnson may be selected to replace him on the movie, but it's just a rumor, and it's just another in a series of high-profile filmmakers parting ways, somewhat controversially, with a Disney franchise. So, Art, are you yay or nay on Lucasfilm's once again pulling the plug on one of its directors?
I mean, I want to say nay, because like it's bogus from a man. Part of me wants to say yay, because Colin Trevorrow, it's got that, he was breaking records with Jurassic. I think he's doing the sequel, right, for Jurassic World. So he's got his baby over there. You know, Universal's treating him well.
Yeah.
Yes, the mouse is mightier, but
he's Universal's big money man too. I mean,
so
it's a lot of responsibility on one.
I think it's what happened. I think someone from Disney went and saw the Book of Henry and said, "Get this man out of our office."
Probably right. I mean, like if you're Colin Trevorrow and the only movie you've made other than your old film Safety Not Guaranteed, and Jurassic World is that stinker. Maybe Disney just doesn't trust you anymore. I don't know.
Like that's how bad it was. They're like, they walked out of the Book of Henry. They're like, "Yo, get this man out of here."
I mean, I'm going to go against my better judgment and actually go yay on this news story, specifically because it's Colin Trevorrow. The dude already has a huge franchise to dedicate his time and energy to. He's had a shot with reviving a nostalgia property. I think there are other directors who you could give the job to. Directors who maybe have made better films. I mean, I still think Safety Not Guaranteed is that dude's best movie, and it's not exactly amazing. It's good. So there's better directors out there to get a shot. I mean, why not give it to somebody like Patty Jenkins off of Wonder Woman, even though she's probably going to be busy directing that sequel too. There's a lot of
then it's better.
Yeah, there's a lot of directors out there, a lot of experienced directors out there. I don't like that Disney is constantly doing this, but I do find it weird when all these names are now thrown out there. Oh, like I want this director who I really like to replace Colin Trevorrow. It's like, why?
That's not how things work.
Why would you want one of your favorite filmmakers to be subjected to this process where they spend months and months and months working on a franchise movie only to be fired off of it?
Because I want them to, just like that Scorsese DiCaprio Joker movie. Okay,
right? That's absolutely gonna happen.
What do you think about Rian Johnson doing too, though? Because I'm the same way, though. I think Rian Johnson and Colin Trevorrow are good directors.
I mean, I think
Good
I like her.
directors.
I like Rian Johnson more than Colin Trevorrow.
Right.
I think it's worth noting that a lot of these Star Wars movies have had controversy behind the scenes. Even The Force Awakens had some controversy behind the scenes with them throwing out a script and starting over again. It doesn't really seem like Episode 8 has had any controversy behind the scenes. Like, he's running a tight ship over there.
It's because Rian Johnson actually invented that machine from Looper, and anytime something goes wrong, he just goes back and fixes it.
It's the most likely explanation at this point, because Disney seems to have problems with all their other directors.
I think he's also very deadpan, because as we know that the whole thing with the Lego dudes, Lord and Miller, was that they were a little too comical.
Yeah.
Boom. So they brought back someone who's a little bit more serious. Ryan Johnson's very serious. You don't get more serious than Brick,
Yeah.
than Looper, than those type of movies. Trevorrow, I think, is very tongue-in-cheek. With Safety Not Guaranteed.
Jurassic
The book
World
was
even had
crazy.
a bunch of...
Jurassic World has a lot of moments where he's going, ha ha.
All the Jake
ha,
Johnson stuff.
Yeah, the Jake Johnson stuff, the whole all in your face. Look, we're a commercial. Get it?
Yeah.
Ha ha. He loved doing that, and those are the parts that I think kind of worked in Jurassic World. They're not gonna let him do that in Star Wars, and maybe that was starting to creep through, and they're like, get out of here. Rian Johnson seems to be very dark. This middle one seems to be the darkest. They liked how they worked. They're like, just finish it off.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what direction they end up going in. And I'd be for them giving Rian Johnson another. I like when these franchises have some level of continuity.
Keep someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
If not, Uwe Ball.
Yeah. There's always Ubal. I'm pretty sure he's available. Cabin in the Woods filmmaker Drew Goddard will write and direct Fox's impending X-Force movie. He's taking over from Joe Carnahan, who had been attached as recently as last year. Goddard more recently helmed the Daredevil Netflix show and was Oscar nominated for The Martian. Art, yay or nay on Goddard as the man to bring X-Force to the screen?
I just don't care. I'm gonna give you that emoji where the dude's just doing this. It ends up being the emoji I use the most. I think he's a cool dude.
Yeah, I like Drew Goddard.
I like him. I like his style.
Yeah.
I am sick and tired of all this X-Men stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm finally getting there to that superhero point where I'm just like... The other day I was watching... I don't know what I was watching. FX commercial came out, and I'm like, oh, it's Legion, I guess, it's the second season. No, Gifted.
Yeah.
So what? Marvel has a movie in theaters right now? Inhumans? I thought that was supposed to be, like, a movie, but it's just a pilot episode to a series? Why is it in theaters?
Does your mind change at all if I tell you that this presumably would be the movie that stars Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, though, in the team-up?
What do you mean?
So X-Force, I believe, is supposed to be with...
Oh, X-Force, yeah, that's right. He would be involved. Is it a movie or is it a TV show?
Movie.
Okay, yeah, I'm done. I completely forgot about who was playing Deadpool.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean...
they just gotta get their stuff together, man. Like, they can make good projects. Deadpool's good, but it's not connected to anything. And then Logan's fantastic, but it's not connected to anything. What's going on?
I don't know. I mean, so I'm going to go nay, but it's only because I'm like one of the very few people in the world that did not enjoy Deadpool. I know. Rip me apart in the comments section. That's fine. But I just can't really get that excited about another movie in this whole X-Men expanded universe. I've kind of grown tired of all, like you know, there's Legion and there's Gifted and there's the...
Getting a little fatigued. I can't keep up.
A bunch of X-Men fatigue. I just can't really stick with this series right now. So Drew Goddard is a good choice. I think it's a good choice, but it's not something that's going to get me interested, particularly in the movie.
Fair enough.
The accountant director Gavin O'Connor has stepped into the vacant role of
boy.
Suicide Squad 2 director. It's not the first time that O'Connor has stepped in for another director. He was the guy who ultimately finished Jane Got a Gun after Lynn Ramsey exited that movie. Here he replaces David Ayer, who directed the first film but was distanced from the movie during the reshoot phase. Art, yay or nay for O'Connor for Suicide Squad 2?
I will watch it only if he brings in your boy from Warrior. Your boy from Lawless. No, he wasn't in Lawless. Your boy from
Tom Hardy?
Joel Edgerton.
Okay.
If he brings in Joel Edgerton, into Suicide Squad, which I don't even know why I'm wishing this. This is so selfish.
Yeah, why would you do that?
Why would I ruin? Like, Joel's got a streak right now. He's directing.
Thing.
He's doing some great things, but if he drags him into it, then maybe. And Joel Edgerton just like steals the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to wish anybody a movie in the DC universe because I'm so hesitant to get on board with any of those movies. But fine, you know, Gavin O'Connor's a really good director, a good director of actors who, you know, I think that will make a difference hopefully in a movie like that.
Imagine if he's able to take those characters. That's my biggest thing. I like genuinely don't like the characters. Yeah. I really don't. If you do, that's great. But imagine if he goes in there and he just like, not only 360s it, no, 180s it, but the continuity still fits.
Right, somehow.
Like somehow, you fall in love with these characters, even though they're still part of this other one.
Stroke. That would be great.
That would, yeah. I'd buy his jersey the next day.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer O'Connor's work on smaller films like Warrior.
Warrior's favorite.
Yeah, he did Miracle also.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'd love to see him do more movies like that, but you know, somebody's got to direct Suicide Squad.
Somebody's got to do it. Pulling strong.
MGM and Eon Productions are offering up the rights to distribute future Bond properties. Columbia Pictures previously held the rights, but it appears Warner Pictures has become the front-runner for this round of bidding. But there may be unexpected tough competition. Apple, as well as Amazon, are apparently interested in acquiring the Bond franchise and might even be willing to outspend Warner Brothers to get it. For the tech companies, owning Bond would give them a name-brand movie franchise that's essentially a license to print money in modern Hollywood, but they could also then expand Bond into spin-offs, TV shows, and more. Art, are you yay or nay on James Bond moving to one of these streaming studios?
Yeah, sure. It's by default. I said I don't care. Would be interesting if Apple buys it, which you know they're gonna re-upload the movies and just be like brand new, like they always do when they take a show.
Have you heard of the Beatles?
Oh, brand new. You hear about that new Michael Jackson album? That's literally just a playlist. Yeah. It'd be really interesting to then see the next James Bond movie. And it zooms in on the phone, and it's all the things the Apple phone can do.
Yeah,
and now he's got the iWatch. No more Rolex. You know that Rolex.
They're gonna replace Q with an Apple Genius Bar.
Holy moly! Hey Siri, help me out. He's like the Rock in that commercial that he made. I say, hey Siri, look at this. Hey Siri, and she just okay. No, you see, that's what happens. I can't have James Bond getting distracted because he's in line waiting for the iPhone 8. Amazon would be interesting, I guess, because then you have them. They have a streaming service where you could be like, hey, if you're a fan, you know, and you don't have your platinum box set that's at home, now you can watch it on the go. Mm-hmm. I guess if there was anyone to get it, I'd be cool with them.
Not only that, Amazon has their path to the movie theaters already established with The Big Sick and Manchester by the Sea. They've put out a bunch of movies that have been relatively successful in movie theaters. I think this is an interesting move. I mean, I am sick of cinematic universes, but I do think that a Bond cinematic universe potentially it could be cool. You know, there's people have for a long time talked about like, what if we could get like a 006 movie or a 005 movie, and is there like a Moneypenny movie out there?
We should have done that a long time ago, to be completely honest.
Yeah, and maybe like the time has passed for there to be interest in that. I think like maybe if you're talking about like when we have to eventually inevitably replace Daniel Craig, you could do it with a whole new line of stuff.
Exactly. Sure, I think it's when they finally replace him, right?
Yeah.
And then just change everything. But we are not. We are like in our 5th Bond, like actual actor Bond. We're 23 Bonds in. Don't give me that, oh, you're tarnishing the reputation by starting at 006. Oh, you want to really spend out. There's 23 of these movies.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that I'll never buy the argument of, like, tarnishing the reputation, ruining my childhood. Like, that stuff's still there. This is just our new spin on it. And you know what? If this stuff all doesn't work, they'll stop doing it. Like,
it's that simple.
I would be curious to see how they try to expand on Bond or do like a James Bond Jr. or something. I don't know.
Junior 07.
Yeah.
Spectre exists. Go take your risk. You already took some.
All right, so we got to get into the rough cuts, quick news stories, responding just briefly to them. First,
I got you.
First comes first. Ryan Murphy is making a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest prequel for Netflix, with Sarah Paulson set to play the role of a young nurse Ratchet, the part that earned Louise Fletcher the Oscar for Best Actress in a Leading Role. Art, yay or nay on Ryan Murphy revisiting Cuckoo's Nest?
I'll say yeah. It's a prequel. Good actress. It's on Netflix, so it's not going to be all up in your face like, oh, you got to go watch this thing. And I'm going to say yes because it may introduce people to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest who may have not seen it.
That's a solid argument, but I gotta go no. Ryan Murphy is making too many TV shows. Leave something else to the rest of us. I know I just talked about the ruining my childhood argument, but stop ruining childhoods, Ryan Murphy. HBO has announced Veep will end after its upcoming 7th season in 2018. Since premiering in 2012, the show has won 12 Emmys and has been nominated for a buttload of others. Art, yay or nay on Veep finally ending?
Yeah, I tried watching the first season. I really couldn't, and just see. No offense to her, Dreyfus, but
comedy god.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
I
am gonna go with yay as well as someone who has seen a few episodes and enjoyed Veep. I do plan to catch up, hopefully in time to watch this last season. But I think there needs to be an end to some comedies. Sometimes, you don't want them getting run into the ground. And first of all, like. From everything I've read, the show has been phenomenal pretty much the whole way through. So let's keep that streak going.
Give awards to somebody else.
And that's the main argument,
right? It's gotten to the point where it's just like, okay, it's ridiculous now. 2 years after it's ended, she's still gonna get nominated for the same.
Yeah, they might as well rename the Golden Globe leading actress thing Best Julia Louis-Dreyfus in a comedy or a musical.
Just like the Oscars are Meryl Streep's ground.
Gal Gadot, was runner-up to Charlize Theron for the role of Furiosa in Mad Max Fury Road, according to new interview on Hollywood Reporter's Awards Chatter podcast. Art, yay or nay on the idea that Gadot could have played Furiosa?
No. Charlize is perfect.
I'm going to go nay too. I liked Gal Gadot in Wonder Woman, and I think there's something about her.
Nice, she's too nice.
Yeah, there's something to her energy, and also the fact that she sounds foreign, like she doesn't have a perfect grasp over an American English accent. That makes her good for something like Wonder Woman. That would make her not as good for something like Furiosa. I like the gruffness that Theron brought to the role, and also I think Theron's older, and I think that works for the role too.
Yeah.
So.
Y'all have seen Mad Max. You know the answer. Yeah. Stop. Stop playing.
Damien Chazelle is making a musical series for Netflix called The Eddy. The series is set in Paris, France, and Chazelle will direct 2 of the 8 episodes. Art, yay or nay on this choice of projects for the La La Land auteur?
Is it going to be shot all in film, 70 millimeter?
I actually don't know what it's...
Will there be alternative endings?
I don't know how Netflix does alternative endings.
I'm all for it because it'd be cool to see him. He moved from moved from movies to see what he can do with TV with a couple of episodes. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a bunch of filmmakers are doing this. Like, let me get a TV series thing. I mean, his Oscar buddy Barry Jenkins has also got a series coming out for Amazon in the continuing war between Amazon and Netflix. So I'm all for it. Damien Chazelle hasn't made anything I disliked so far, so I'll give him benefit of the doubt until he does. People got their first glimpse of Mr. Robot star Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury in the upcoming biopic Bohemian Rhapsody from director Bryan Singer. Art, does this photo make you more excited for the movie, yay or nay?
Boy, let me work those double thumbs, the only ones I'm going to give you on this show today. That looks incredible, and this is coming from someone who was devastated. Okay, whatever. I was sad that... Sacha Baron Cohen couldn't do it. Sacha Baron Cohen I felt was perfect, and it wasn't just the fact that Sacha Baron Cohen left, the fact that he's got the talent, the acting, the singing, all of that to go with it, but it was the idea that I feel they want to go a tame version, and that kind of really upset me. But he looks really good, and it's got me back up there.
I used to feel so devastated about the Sacha Baron Cohen thing, but now it's looking like we made a good one there.
All right, now you see where I was going with that. Joey's in season 2 of Mr. Robot.
Yes.
There you go.
Dude, Rami Malek is absolutely just a perfect looking doppelganger in the part. I really like him as an actor on Mr. Robot, so I have no reason to believe he would be bad in this role.
I like him as an actor in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting choice of having Bryan Singer for the project, too. I haven't really liked a lot of Bryan Singer's movies.
Bryan Singer? Oh.
But the photo, we're just talking about the photo.
The photo is insane, though.
Definitely ready.
But, that guy who played Tupac looked like Tupac.
That is a good point.
You know what I mean?
Which I will ignore for now. In our last rough cut story, Indiana Jones 5 will return in 2020, but Shia LaBeouf's character Mutt no longer will be part of the mix. Yay or nay on them abandoning the young character for the new Indiana Jones sequel?
Is it still going to be Ford?
Yeah, that's apparently the plan.
Yeah, I'm for it because Harrison Ford's going to die again.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're just going to pretend that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull didn't happen.
Stop. No, you know what's going to happen. He's dying in Blade Runner, the new one. He's dying in this one. They're remaking everything he's been in, and he's going to die in every single thing.
Just kill him off so he doesn't have to feel obligated
They're
to do
going to make
more
a sequel
sequels.
to Morning Glory, and just to kill him off, like right before he does the news, okay?
Yeah, I'm nay, I don't know. I don't need more Indiana Jones.
You're this one.
Yeah, let's go Shruggy guy. I'm Shruggy guy.
So,
all right, so we move forward to our topic of the week. And this week we are discussing how Hollywood deals with depression and sadness. There's been a slew of newly released shows and movies that take on protagonists that are dealing with the affliction, that in one way or another are glamorizing or making it more relatable. We just talked a little bit in the beginning about how Art and I are both huge fans of the show BoJack Horseman, which in my opinion is doing the whole discussion of depression thing better than anything right now.
Else.
Art, what is it about the show that you think hits so well in terms of how it deals with depression?
I've always said this. I've always been that advocate who says, if you want to handle something that's super serious, cartoons, talking animals, anything that is as far away as possible from human beings, because that's what it's about. I've always, one of the best books dealing with the Holocaust, Mouse, because it completely strips away any, connection that you may have with a Jew or a German, and it's just cats and mice.
Mm-hmm.
Zootopia.
Right.
After it got overhyped, and now it's cool to hate on it, but, that movie covered certain aspects of race and
prejudice in general.
Prejudice with animals, And a lot of people are like, oh, this person could also be that person. And oh my goodness, by stripping away our own cultures and ethnicities and just putting it on a Rorschach type of thing, we're able to see it from a perspective that's better and not being manipulated by our own bias. I think that's what's great about BoJack Horseman, is that if you were to have something like, and I'm trying to think of like shows, I don't watch them, so I don't know, but those shows where it's like a guy going through depression and yada yada yada, you're like, this is corny, this is cheesy, we all know how this is gonna go, he's gonna find his muse, whatever it is, and yeah, the difference here is that it shows you, no, this person is depressed for the first season, for the second season, for the third season, for the fourth season. It's going to be for the fifth season. Because the reason he's depressed is because he doesn't change. It is brutally honest at getting there. And I think that's where just animation as a whole has gotten, where it's just like, you know what? With animation, we can get to the darkest parts because we have this veil in front of it of a talking horse, of all these crazy puns, of a burping drunk professor, of... I don't know, Bob's Burgers, I guess, can get dark. Like, all these different things, that is... South Park, one of the pioneers since the beginning, you know what I mean?
Simpsons, too.
Simpsons as well. Futurama, I guess I would throw in there as well. All of these shows that are adult animation that is able to get into some really deep stuff because it doesn't take itself too seriously. I think the best serious shows are the ones that don't take themselves seriously.
Yeah, I've actually listened to a lot of interviews with Raphael Bob Wassberg, who created and showruns BoJack Horseman, and he talked about one of the things that he thinks enables the show to go to such dark, serious places is the fact that the show is so silly. There's
100%.
when you sit down and you watch the show and you're so willing to let it go that far in the silliness direction, then you're also willing to let the tone sort of flex in the other direction. There is like a flexibility, a
It
rubberness to the
opens
tone of
it,
that show.
yes.
And if you're gonna accept the fact that, all right, we're gonna have a underwater episode where BoJack can't talk to the fish because they're all communicating, you can also accept when BoJack goes on a minute-long monologue about how he feels empty inside. So
Yes.
I think it's really interesting, partially because similar to the way that depression, I guess, works with real life. It's, you know, it's bursts of sadness, and it's things that it's not something that it's like a period. It's something that is constantly kind of under the surface. So with a show like BoJack, you get a lot of joy the way that a lot of people are able to from life, but then the sadness sort of interjects itself into the plot, and I think it creates a much more natural experience of how people deal with depression. And, you know, oddly, these very unhuman characters become very humane through this show. But, you know, you talked about some the idea of other shows handling depression and it maybe being a little more melodramatic. I'm also having
Heavy-handed,
heavy-handed too. I'm struggling to think of some more shows outside of, like, I know In Treatment was on HBO for a little while when in the 2000s, but one show that I think handles it pretty well is Mr. Robot. It doesn't necessarily go too much into depression; it's more mental health. But I think it does an interesting job of showing how his mental symptoms manifest physically, and how he's not able to be physically well if his mind isn't well.
That's a good one. Again, I haven't seen season 2,
Right.
so I don't know how well to develop it, but I think, that's a genius perspective of it. I think there are many shows, and I think what handles it well is if you're overviewing the character or if you're actually in the mindset of the character. And Mr. Robot is the perfect example. The way that it's shot, the way that it feels.
They do a lot to really make you be in his shoes, feel how he feels.
His headspace, literally, with the way they do headspace. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the biggest things is Mr. Robot truly gets into the mindset of him. I'm trying to think of, there was another show, it's like slipping my mind.
Well, how would you contrast that with maybe something like 13 Reasons Why, then? A Netflix show that we've talked about some of our issues with.
Yeah. Netflix has been pushing it with all these atypical, with being able to handle, people who are on the spectrum, with To the Bone, with being able to handle people who are dealing with eating disorders. To me, I'll watch it again. See, that's the thing. A lot of people think that I hate it. But it felt heavy-handed because it's trying to give you this message of you are responsible for somebody else.
And doing it in a kind of like slick, fun way.
You're being entertained by the thing that you're trying to prevent. And I don't know why people keep ignoring that Google searches and suicides rose right after the show. Mm-hmm. Because literally the message of the show, which, you're also, because there's a season 2 coming out. You're telling people that if you're thinking of committing suicide, here's an episode that shows you how to go through with it. And here is an entire season prolonged into 13 episodes that people were entertained by because a girl played this game by committing suicide. So you know what you can do? Go play that same game, and finally people will talk about you like they talked about Hannah Baker.
What about the way that the show does it, though, is the problem to you? Do you think it's just the material itself, or is it that presentation? Is it that they show the suicide? Is it that they don't necessarily show how depressed she is?
I think that's a perfect example. She is suffering from a lot of things. The character of Hannah Baker is suffering from a lot of things. I personally do not mind the cutting of it. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things when you're arguing with someone, but you don't really care about it, but they are so on something that you got to now change your stance on it. I have no problem with showing. I'm that person. I'm completely, show whatever you want. Mm-hmm. That's art. My problem is that when you're trying to have that stance of, this is a show that helps suicide. The suicide, the Suicide Society tells you to not do that.
Right.
Do you get what I mean? So don't pull that. Now I have to pretend like it's sort of like a gun violence, not you know what I mean?
Right.
Now I have to pretend like I'm against it just because you're so dumb and contradicting yourself.
Right.
You brought up a perfect, great thing about it. One of my biggest problems from the show is that people think it's gospel. People think that Hannah Baker's a real character. Some people think this is based off of a true story. It is not. Mm-hmm. This is a male dude who wrote a book about a girl who played a game with suicide. Hannah Baker is not a real character. There is no real person. Bet me. Like, don't just say, oh, no, yeah, there is. I've met. I don't care who you've met. Show me somebody. If it is a real person, then there's bound to have been a case. No person is like Hannah Baker, who has a freaking podcast voice and artistic skills to write 13 tapes, but is super depressed and doesn't know how to express her emotions.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really did bother me about 13
That's a fake character.
13 Reasons Why, is how calm, cool, and collected she is in approaching her suicide. It's so...
Yeah, because that's not a real character.
Such an easy decision for her, and that's... I mean, you know, you can say what you want to, but I do think that's not a really responsible way to demonstrate
It's lying to
it.
people.
Yeah, and it's
Exactly.
lying to... It's a dishonest take on the
And
issue.
that's why I like these other shows where we actually are from their perspective, where we're like, those decisions that they're making actually make sense.
So
This reflects, yeah.
Let's move into a movie that you and I saw recently, and we're gonna throw out a bit of a spoiler warning because in order to talk about Ingrid Goes West, we want to get into the way that movie ended. So if you don't really want to get spoiled on Ingrid Goes West, you can click ahead using the time codes in the description down below. But if you don't think you're going to see the movie, just stick with us through the rest of this discussion. I think it'll be worthwhile.
You think it's worth watching in theaters or at home?
I think so, but I would say that it's for a specific crowd. It's for more of like an art crowd. I would compare it kind of to Spring Breakers, like if that movie appealed to you or if you enjoyed it.
I say rent it.
It's definitely an interesting movie, or if you're just really interested in like the way that social media impacts people, I think it's worth watching.
No, it's worth watching because we're having a conversation on it.
That too. So, Art.
That's a good movie.
That is another movie that deals with a character that's got some mental issues going on. Aubrey Plaza's character Ingrid is clearly depressed throughout the movie and uses this friendship with the Elizabeth Olsen character to try and bring validation into her life. I know you wanted to get into the ending of that movie. What about it specifically?
Well, I think before we get to the ending,
Okay.
what I think makes the movie good is that when you just don't have a discussion about a movie that just doesn't make you think, that's a bad movie. That's a bad movie. Even if it's a bad movie, it's a worse movie if it doesn't even have you think
It gives
at
you
all.
no
At
food
first
for thought.
Yeah, at first I thought I was like, nah, that was lame. Was it? Does this movie not fit everything I was just saying about putting you literally in the shoes of the character? You follow Aubrey Plaza to the point where you're like, this girl's crazy. And then in a scene, you're rooting for her to get her way.
Mm-hmm.
You are hoping she is able to get that truck back in time. You are hoping that she's able to outdo this dude, the brother, who's trying to screw her over.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, wait, she's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Before you realize that you're like in too deep with her.
Exactly. That's a good movie because it's a character who's honestly despicable in a sense, but you side with her at some points, and then by the end of it, you have to realize, wow, you actually dragged me along for your ride for a bit, and actually made me understand a character that honestly, like, I would make fun of. Mm-hmm. A character that would be like, you're a weirdo, you're crazy.
Oh yeah,
I'm putting a restraining order.
And that's sometimes what the best movies are, when they can get you to
movie.
empathize with someone who does sort of seem like out of your mindset or different from you. And for this in particular, you know, I think a lot of times we talk down about the whole idea of like fangirls or creepy internet stalkers, but you can see the thought process here and how it sort of
it makes them real.
It makes them real, and it really like it's something that helps her get through her pain in a weird way. I'm not trying to justify her actions, but it's, you know, everybody has their different coping mechanisms, and her coping mechanism is to sort of emulate the people she sees on Instagram.
I think that's what made it believable. I don't want to compare it to like a Taxi Driver, but you know, like in Taxi Driver, you're following him, and then you realize this is kind of crazy. Like this dude starts doing some like jacked up stuff. Here in the same way, what made it so good, does it not kind of feel like a Sundance version of an episode of Black Mirror?
Yeah, that's
very, very tiny, kind of
like a Sundance version of that Nosedive episode almost.
Okay, the beginning of the movie is that Nosedive episode, first of all. But it was, like you mentioned, she's doing these crazy things. But any other movie would have just had her do these crazy things to do them, to be like, oh, look at how insane she is. But then they show you that cutaway scene where she's crying, where she's remembering her mom when she's just sitting there alone. and then you realize there's people out there just like this person. This isn't a caricature. There are people out there like this person, and this movie shows you their perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, she's clearly a broken person. There's a void in her life, and whatever she was getting through this Instagram process was helpful. I mean, I think it's interesting to see a movie that takes on something like this. I do think there are few movies that deal with people who seek alternative methods of healing when they're not drugs and alcohol. There's a lot of, person was depressed and turned to drugs and alcohol. There's Leaving Las Vegases and stuff like that. But there's not a lot of movies where it's like, I am really sad, I'm going to pretend I'm someone else. Or I'm really sad, I
need attention.
Yeah, I'm going to change everything about myself. And that dig into the depression beneath it. So that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about Ingrid Goes West. And I'm not sure how you felt about that ending, but I thought it was a really interesting turn to have when she goes through this live stream where she attempts suicide on it and wakes up in the hospital with tons and tons of followers, getting the kind of adoration that she put onto others. And she doesn't seem thrilled. I mean, I would say she doesn't seem upset, but it's certainly not the kind of reaction you think you would get from her at the end there. What did you take from Ingrid's reaction to her tons of followers?
Well, like you said, for those who may be watching, because you're all rebels and you didn't care about spoilers, she moves to LA to befriend this Instagram very famous person, and then when everything gets revealed that she's like a stalker and a creep, and she can no longer have that attention that she's seeking after her mother's death, she tries to commit suicide on live stream, and that's what makes her famous when she wakes up in the garage because Ice Cube Jr. saved her. Jr. Yeah, and I thought she got what she wanted. Did you actually? You read it like she wasn't happy? I read it like it ends right when she's just like, finally, I got what I want.
I think so. I do think that there was a bit of like a validation there, but I don't know if it's an empty validation of sorts.
Oh no, it definitely is. Yeah. But remember what she said right when she was about to die. What's the point of living if you don't have people to share it with?
True.
That's what she got.
Yeah, and I guess in a way that is, everything she wanted. I do,
She's still Ingrid. She's still crazy, but we spent an hour and 40 minutes with, so it's not like she changed overnight.
Yeah. I do wonder, I mean, there is a really weird, message there to deal with, like, is like crazy actions like that, is live streaming your suicide, is risking your own health or comfort for the entertainment of others.
Let's get into that.
Let's
get into that.
I mean,
what is your opinion on that?
I mean, well, obviously, like, my opinion on the idea is it's not worth it, but my opinion on the idea of Ingrid discussing that possibility,
showing it.
By showing it, yeah. I don't think that they're advocating it. I think there's, by showing how clearly psychopathic she's been throughout the film and how her, reward center is clearly off, how the way she feels validation is completely off from a normal person. It's trying to show you that these are the actions of someone who is unwell, and to seek justification or validation this way is to be unwell. So for me, I took the ending as a warning to people, not necessarily a call to action.
Agreed, same way. When I saw the ending, I was just like, someone's bound to see this and be like, that's all I need. The sort of the 13 Reasons Why thing. Mm-hmm. This is all I need to do to gain attention. The difference being is that everybody sympathized for Hannah Baker and everyone like refused to blame her. Mm-hmm. And they were all like, no, it's all our faults. She's queen. Like you said, here, that ending, it's not glorifying it. Unless you were sleeping for that hour 40, then you would know that the movie is clearly telling you anything she finds happiness with is wrong. Mm-hmm. It's like you're watching Breaking Bad. Just because at the end he finally smiles doesn't mean that all, 6 seasons?
Worth it.
Do you get what I...
My brother-in-law's dead. Worth it. Spoiler alert.
You put it perfectly. So it's like you had a whole entire movie telling you, preparing you for that ending. But when it ended, I was just like, someone's bound to watch this movie and think
That's not a bad idea.
that's not a bad idea. But then I thought, I'm like, okay,
But that's a person who's already unwell.
thank you. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Because would you say? I'm sure you see Quentin Tarantino movies. Are you of that mindset? And I'm pretty sure you're not. But are you of that mindset where you shouldn't show things in fear of someone who isn't stable watching it and then mimicking it? Because this is where the discussion is going.
I mean, I am not hard of like steadfast in that. My opinion is that there are like responsible ways to go about showing things, and that if like you are trying to do something with your work, that you shouldn't. You should know what you're...
Irreversible. Is that bad to show?
I mean, I don't necessarily think so. I think, like, it...
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo has something similar. All
Right.
rape scenes, by the way.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. Especially Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, they come back to it, and they make it... It's part of her character. And I think that there are ways to justify just about anything on screen. So if that's
Okay.
the answer to your question.
Yeah, the way that I see it is, I don't think there should be artistic censorship. I think there should be viewer censorship. Like, we can outlaw, and I guess now we're getting into, like, you can outlaw
Policy.
certain weapons,
Right.
but someone's going to still make a makeshift bomb. Someone's going to get a freaking pole, a stick, and do harm to people. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know it's something where it's just like, yeah, we have to be watching out for each other, but in that case, I feel like if someone is in that condition, then we should be looking out for that person to make sure they don't do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if you're on a diet, that doesn't mean everyone in the world can now not serve carbs.
Totally.
Or sweets.
And to me, I view it more like in the sense that to something like 13 Reasons Why, when the suicide...
It gave a view...
When they come out and say, like, this is bad for people who are at risk of suicide, then there should be, like, a collective voicing of that opinion. But that doesn't necessarily mean, like, you can't make the thing. It's just, I think we as a society could do a lot to, say this is bad for us or this is good for us. And
Yeah, and we're in the internet age. You know right away whether to watch something or not. Like we said, we were talking about
Or you
it
can look it
earlier.
up pretty easily.
Straight up said, yeah. They tell you detail for detail without even spoiling. It just tells you exactly the words, when they're said, different situations, visuals that may be upsetting to you. If you don't want to watch it, skip it. Lost my train of thought.
Well, okay, so let's circle back a bit because the topic is how Hollywood deals with depression. So we've talked about BoJack. We've talked about a little bit about Mr. Robot and 13 Reasons Why. We moved on to Ingrid Goes West. These are all a bunch of recent movies that kind of have, or TV shows that have a more modern take on adult depression, I guess, in the sense that they don't necessarily buy into the viewpoint that your life has to be really, really bad to feel depressed, or that you have to resort to, drugs. I mean, BoJack definitely does resort to drugs and alcohol a lot, but it's not what the show is about.
Everything.
In the sense that a lot of movies that are
It's
about
a satire
abuse.
in a sense too with that. But yeah, no, for real.
So would you say that is almost like a defining characteristic of how Hollywood is dealing with depression, in that we're looking for almost the alternative ways that depression manifests, instead of just the alcoholics and the drug addicts? We're looking at people who abuse their bodies, people who cut themselves, and people who act out, in weird ways in public.
No, it's so much easier to like go to rehab or I mean, it's not easy, but it's so much more, I guess, acceptable to admit that you have a problem with alcohol, or a problem with drugs.
Or there's at least a clear
sexual problem?
There's at least a clearer path to recovery, even though it's a very hard path that lots of people struggle with.
Because we see it in movies, Fight Club.
There's an example there.
Yeah, whether AA meetings look boring, it's presented. And we see those journeys, those struggles overcome in story arcs in movies and TV shows. But like sexual stuff, shame, is like one of the very few movies I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe Dallas Buyers Club, because how hard is it to you to admit you have a sexual addiction? How hard is it for you to admit that you have I guess gambling would go up there with the other two, but lying, like, I don't know, different things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That when they're not in the forefront, people don't know how to admit that they have a problem because it's not something that's very accepted. Take, for example, sexual orientation. it's become more of a normal thing. Why? Because there's more exposure to it. That's why I like shows
People
like
are more comfortable
Atypical.
being out about it and stuff.
Exactly. That's why I like shows like Atypical, because now you don't have to be that awkward person when you meet someone with autism and go like, hello. Know that they're also a person, but you don't know that when you don't spend time with them. That's why when people meet deaf people or when people meet blind people, they yell because they're not aware of that. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, no,
I think that's a big thing.
It's showing an example for people, and it's really great.
Movies are that.
It's a really,
TV is that.
Yeah, exactly. You need those examples in media to sort of give people who don't know better a pathway to better behavior, to give them ground rules and stuff like that.
So it makes us ignorant, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that that's a big thing. The more that you show it, the more it's going to get out there. The more that you realize that depression is something that is a condition for some people. I don't suffer from it, and I'm thankful for that. And that's why I'm one of those people who's very... Because, we're also in a time period where people can just be lazy and blame it on depression.
Right.
And that ticks me off, not because I want to blame someone, because people would be very quick... Who are you to define it? No, it upsets me because I know you're lazy, while that person over there legit is having a hard time overcoming it because he doesn't know how to, or he or she doesn't know how to admit to it, doesn't know how to declare it. And I think the more that we show that it's not, depression isn't misery, like literally the movie Misery, that it isn't all of these depictions that we used to see before of someone being crazy, but that they can actually be normal people who are suffering from stuff.
Right.
That they're not always serial killers.
Totally, and they can be
I think it's a good shift.
Alcoholic, washed out horse actors.
Talking horses. We used to have a hit show in the 90s.
I just, one last question. We'll go to this quickly before we move on. But what are some of your other favorite examples of sadness and depression being communicated through movies? I just, for me personally, I go back to, I already know, but go ahead, say it. My favorite movie is Punch Drunk Love, and Adam Sandler's character is so in his head in that movie. It's beautiful to me. Like there's just like little
that's
moments.
A perfect example.
There's little moments in that movie, like where he will he goes on that date with I want to say her name's Lena, Emily Watson's character.
Are we talk? I swear, if you bring up the same thing I was bringing up, the whole camera movements.
Oh no, not the camera movement. So this is when he's leaving the date and he says okay bye bye, and then he just walks down the hallway like okay bye bye you stupid fucking piece of shit. Like and that's like such a familiar feeling, and it's not really shown in movies much. So I think that's a great little moment from Punch Drunk Love. And Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, I think, is another really good one.
That was another one I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, it deals with all the nostalgia and depression of losing this relationship in a really interesting way. I also thought of, just because bringing up Charlie Kaufman, Anomalisa is another really interesting approach to depression, in the fact that it sort of is this allegory for a guy who doesn't find happiness in the people around him, and everybody sort of is the same kind of blah to him. Anomalisa, I think, is another unconventional approach from Charlie Kaufman to dealing with depression on screen.
No, it's true. Those are good ones. Besides Jim Carrey's recent speech at that art gala.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Part of me wants to say one of the most exciting ones, more of a comedy, would be The Truman Show. That's more of an existential crisis, I would say, I guess, more than anything. You mentioned Kaufman, so I'm going to go super artsy for those of you who want it. Synecdoche, New York.
Oh, look at you.
So that's one right there. But for those of you with families, Inside Out, I think, is a very commercial, the whole idea. It's like, the more that I think about it, it's like I don't care too much for Inside Out.
Same.
Like, it's not up there with the greats for me in Pixar. But when I go back and I think about it, when I get into discussions like this, I always think back to Inside Out. I was like, hey, what's a good example? Dang it, I actually appreciate that movie more than I think. The blue glow of sadness was around joy the whole time, because you can't have moments of joy without... Yeah, it's deep. People, why do we say Pixar is gone?
We got to revise that, I guess. I don't know. I had problems with Inside Out, but I can't...
Right, no, but at the end...
I can't pretend there aren't a lot of really valid discussions in there, especially as a way of communicating the idea of sadness to young children.
Yes, sir.
And its importance. So those are our thoughts on how Hollywood deals with depression. But for now, we move on to our final segment of the week. It's the new to see. We're looking to theaters where, speaking about mental health, Mother, ! Is out this weekend. I'm going to see that movie Thursday night. I don't know about you, Art.
Yeah, that remake?
Of
The remake of Rosemary's Baby?
yeah, I saw you retweet that tweet out that
no,
poster.
I've said this since I saw the first trailer. It's Rosemary's Baby, dude.
Mm-hmm.
It's Rosemary's
It's modern.
Baby.
Definitely seems like modern
Bro,
Rosemary's Baby.
it's called Mother. Is she? Do you see her pregnant?
I mean, I'm really curious to see what we get. I've heard from people who are at TIFF that Michelle Pfeiffer is amazing in it.
She looks good.
She
looks hot too.
Yeah. Also, the interesting subplot that Darren Aronofsky, the director, and Jennifer Lawrence are apparently dating. And
yeah, that's right.
so that's kind of an interesting twist to throw into here. So I'm curious to see what that movie's going to be like. American Assassin is also out this weekend with Dylan O'Brien, Michael Keaton, Sanaa Lathan, and Taylor Kitsch. Brad's Status, written and directed by Mike White, who did School of Rock and also Enlightened on HBO. That's coming out this weekend with Ben Stiller, Jermaine Clement, Jenna Fisher, Michael Sheen, and Luke Wilson. Then Rebel in the Rye, the debut from director Danny Strong with Blake Lively, Danny Houston, and Jason Clarke. Art, what did you think?
Yo, this movie's getting pooped on. I thought it was like, okay, I'm gonna tell you what this is. This is that biopic that you watch on Netflix. Baby, Lifetime.
You never want to hear Lifetime come up in that sentence.
It's decent though.
Yeah.
It's cheesy though. Like there's some lines where like that's a good line, but that was so cheesy. Yeah. I don't care if you're Kevin Spacey. I don't care.
I tend to approach debut films from actors turned directors with a lot of skepticism.
Who directed it?
Danny Strong. He's not particularly famous. He was on a few episodes of Mad Men. You might recognize his face from TV. But
maybe
this is a guy who's established as an actor, and he's making that transition. And I feel, there are...
Taylor Sheridan was an actor.
There are actors who make a really good transition, particularly like lesser-known character actors. Sometimes
Han Solo spin-off director was an actor.
I think a lot of the time, though, I think about like Chris
right.
Messina made a movie, Clark Gregg made a movie. They end up being a little slow, a little indulgent, especially at first, until they then get to more interesting projects down the line. Another movie coming out this weekend is All I See Is You from director Mark Foster, who's fallen off the map a little bit in recent years. I mixed up the stars. This is the one that's Blake Lively, Danny Houston, Jason Clarke, Rebel in the Rise, Zoe Dutch, Nick Holt, Kevin Spacey, Sarah Paulson.
I was about to say, Blake Lively was not in that movie.
And then in limited release this weekend because of Cratia, Woodpeckers, and In Search of Fellini. So, not a lot there that I'm interested in aside from Mother, although I probably will see Brad's Status. I like Mike White.
I might see BoJack again.
New to streaming on Netflix, we already mentioned BoJack, which has been out for a few days now. But on September 13th, they're adding Ghost of the Mountains. On September 14th, Disney's Pocahontas. On September 15th, we're getting the new Angelina Jolie film that premiered at the Telluride Film Festival. First They Killed My Father. Oh, you read the book. Interesting.
Yo, back in freshman year, they made us read that book, and I was like, "Why are we reading this?" I'm hyperventilating because I'm going to high school, and now what are my worries about? This girl lost her father. What do I care about getting picked on as a freshman?
Yeah, there you go. Give you some perspective for high school.
So depressing.
This movie had a little bit of controversy after a Vanity Fair profile, I believe, came out, and there was some rumors that Angelina Jolie had some questionable ethics during her casting of Cambodian orphans to play the lead role in this movie. There's better places to read about it. There's better places to read about it than like listening to me half remember the details. But
like she adopted all the Cambodian orphans.
Something like
trial
that.
Period for them, and then. Okay.
But the movie has been getting pretty solid reviews, better reviews than the last two films she directed, both of which I'm not a fan of, Unbroken and...
Wait, what did she direct? She didn't direct those?
Oh, yeah, sorry, your boy Roger Deakins directed them secretly.
Roger Deakins directed those, right? Those.
I forget the name of her first movie, In Search of a Heart or some...
No, in the something Blood and Honey?
Yeah.
In the Land of Blood and Honey, something like that, right?
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, September 15th, not only are Netflix users getting First They Killed My Father, but two new music documentaries, Foo Fighters Back and Forth, and George Harrison Living in the Material World. So music fans, some cool stuff out there for you.
Yeah.
Hulu on September 14th is adding South Park's 21st season for Cartman loyalists. HBO Go is adding Best Picture winner, sorry, wrong envelope. La La Land on September 16th, and then on September 17th, we get the premiere of the second season of Vice Principals with Walton Goggins and Danny McBride.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen the first season. I'm not usually a Danny McBride fan, but I've heard that Vice Principals is good, so...
The trailers look good.
Trailers look funny. I have to give it to them. Shudder, the horror streaming service on September 14th.
Dude,
it's good stuff.
Invest in stock now.
So on September 14th, they are adding the movie Let Me Make You a Martyr. This is a horror movie starring Marilyn Manson, and it's premiering exclusively on the horror streaming service. But then on September 18th, they're adding the movie Grand Piano, and if you're a fan of Damien Chazelle in La La Land, that is a script that he wrote before he made Whiplash. This movie stars Elijah Wood as well.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
It's a cartoon, but I love it. It's one of those movies where it's so crazy.
I heard the ending is actually really good, which would make Chazelle 3 for 3 on endings. Maybe.
I can't remember it, but it's insane.
All right, so those are the new in theaters and streaming options for this weekend. Art, what is your pick for the week?
Mother, I guess.
Yeah. Mother's really good.
BoJack, I mean, other than,
It.
How we usually do.
It?
You gotta see it with a group of friends. That's what that movie is.
Yeah.
That's why it's good.
Well,
Watch
it's
with a group
probably
of
good
friends.
to go then, like, sooner rather than later before the theaters are no longer crowded. Like, comedies and horrors
That's
you
the beauty of
really
it,
need
yeah.
to see in a crowded theater.
Pack it in. No, that's what made it. One of the audience members going, oh, heck no. Another one, like, just literally, like, crying. You gotta see with an audience.
Yeah.
See with a clown. Go dressed up as a clown if you can.
Yeah, please. Oh, so yeah, it'll be tonight by the time we post this, but tomorrow night, the Alamo Drafthouse here in New York is doing their
I don't even want to know.
clown
I don't
only
even want to
screening.
know.
Should I show up? Like, should I go?
Please. Go.
I might have to
and film
vlog
the whole
that.
thing.
Yeah, I might have to vlog that. We'll see.
Dude, that is an experience right there.
I'm probably gonna go see it sometime this week, but I definitely recommend everybody check out BoJack Horseman. If you are somehow not on the BoJack hype train, get on it, because that is just some of the most brilliant TV out there. We didn't really get into it here on the podcast, but I will say I did think the 4th season was not as good as previous seasons. Still is
it's
amazing.
not bad.
It's still amazing.
Yeah, like,
I'm
you're
not
watching,
even
you're
going
like-
to say good. I'm saying amazing.
No, I feel you 100%. I honestly, I think maybe the 3rd season. Second season I think is the funniest. Second season I think is my
Second
favorite.
season is my
Third
favorite,
season
too.
though is when they're like, you know what? How about we make this a work of art?
Yeah.
Right? How about we make every single episode like a different narrative technique?
Mm-hmm.
Season 4, I called it fan service. Usually that's a negative term. What I mean by that is like it's earned all of its jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're looking out for something and they know you're looking for it and they just put, hey, here's a flashback. Flashback joke goes here.
Right.
The George Clooney one? Do you remember George Clooney? Isn't it George Clooney's? Who cares?
Yeah.
That's
perfect.
what season 4 is.
Perfect.
And it's them flexing, really,
Yeah.
is what they're doing. It's saying, you're here for the 4th season, you know what's up, let's go.
And there's, like you mentioned, there's not as much of the, like, experimentation with structure or in episode type.
It's actually quite simple.
Yeah.
It really is.
Which is kind of what threw me off, I think, at first, but I've already rewatched the whole season.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, am I wrong? Does not, like, a little bit more, but the entire second half just feel like one episode of trying to find the mom? That's what I thought it was. I felt like that is an entire... Other ones, we got different things going on, but literally it just feels like the whole thing is just that.
There's a couple things that happen, particularly the 11th episode, which, they always do that penultimate episode on BoJack where the penultimate episode is very trippy and different. So that definitely breaks it up.
This is what it is. I found every other story to be more interesting than BoJack's, I think.
That is another thing that was kind of interesting. I think this was one of the least BoJacky seasons of BoJack Horseman.
I like... You know what? I'm complaining about it, but I like that. I like that we didn't see him in the first episode.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool touch.
That was
too.
cool.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend BoJack Horseman, but because that would have been my recommendation regardless, and it's,
You guys know how it goes.
You know how it
we're
goes.
talking about it. We're recommending it. So
I'm going to throw out another recommendation for Ingrid Goes West. It's probably not going to be in theaters much longer, so if it's in your area, check it out before you don't get the chance to see it in theaters. I like it a lot. It's got a great, maybe career best performance from Aubrey Plaza, showing some range that I've not really expected to see from her when I saw her, as the dark kind of person on Parks and Recreation, but she's really, really good, emotional and funny in this role. Elizabeth Olsen's great.
Also really good.
O'Shea Jackson Jr. What
think-
a
you like
charming dude. You didn't like him?
He is. No, I think he's like super cool, but I feel like I'm watching my friend in a movie and I'm just going like, well, you can't.
Well, yeah, I want to hang out with O'Shea Jackson in Ingrid Goes West.
Ah, but he feels like he's acting, in my opinion. He's got that persona where you're like, boy, you do you, but you're not an actor. You're not an actor.
All right. Well, I liked it a lot. I would definitely check out Ingrid Goes West.
Sounds good.
That's all for this week's show, though. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter or Instagram @ZShevich, and check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/multiplexshow, where I'll be posting some new videos shortly. Art, where can people find more from you?
Find me at the A to Z Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm trying to upload at, I'm not going to say daily basis, but I'm trying to upload at least 3 times a week, trying to get just a bunch of stuff in September, trying to find, just trying to experiment with different things. I call myself the A to Z Show, so I just want to make it more of a show format, and just because we have a lot of thoughts on things, so I just want to be able to put them out there. So check me out over there, and we can discuss, we can argue, we can fight.
Yeah,
Just talk about movies
you're
and
branching out into some music videos
Some
now,
music
too.
stuff. Some people don't like that. Some people adore it. Some people aren't watching the video. How about you do that?
Unsubscribed. This isn't what I'm here for. I don't pay you with my time for
yeah, so, okay. That's cool.
this. You can listen to every episode of the Intercut podcast by checking us out on iTunes, or we are moving our SoundCloud thing, so that'll be updated soon. Make sure to subscribe here on YouTube, though, where every episode shows up first. New episodes are posted Tuesdays. Then also make sure to like our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. They're all at Intercut Pod. That's Intercut Pod. For updates throughout the week from both of us. I'm retweeting a lot of the stuff that we do there, so you don't even have to follow me in Art. You can check out Intercut and you'll get a lot of our best updates. But thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, of course, that's what you get when you fall for a horse.
Babu.